What's good enough at YouTube? This is Crazy Samurai sitting on here bringing another video. Samurai video on Lupinranger vs. Patoranger episode 19. This episode is called Compensation for Instruction Violation. The episode basically gives you a straightforward idea as to what it's going to focus on. And in this case, it's actually focusing on Sequoia, which is interesting. It doesn't really expand his background, like his backstory, but it focuses more on his personality, I guess you could say. It also introduces us to a new character, and it introduces us to a new combination for Pat Kaiser. So that's kind of cool to see. We'll add more. And it was okay. It was an okay episode. The episode begins with us actually seeing Sequoia heading down the street. There's this girl that's being attacked by someone who is kind of being a little bit aggressive with her and wanting to get her to be with him. And the thing is that Sequoia grabs the guy and dunks him under some water, and then he says, "I'll get you later," and then he runs off. And in the meantime, the girl thanks him for rescuing him, for rescuing her. And then what we end up seeing is that back at the Patoranger base, they're discussing different things. One thing that happens is that they end up hearing about these reports where suddenly cars are being cut in half without any explanation at all. Like, nothing is visibly seen, but all they know is that they're being destroyed suddenly. And so they initially think it's a natural phenomenon, and that's about it. But then eventually things will become more clear to them. So for starters, what does end up happening from here is that eventually the deputy director for the global police comes in. And the deputy director is this high energy, goofy character that, he's not a big fan of Sequoia, just because of his personality, his attitude, how he's dressed, and all that kind of stuff. Because he's not zippered up all the way with his jacket, and just a whole bunch of other things are not making him happy. On top of that, the Power Rangers always being, the fact that the Lupinrangers are seen more in the spotlight as opposed to the Power Rangers, which are typically less often talked about in the news, is a concern for him, because again, he's the director and he wants to have a good reputation, and the reputation is the part that really matters to him more than anything. And so what happens is that he keeps on calling Commissioner Hilton. Yeah, he calls him Commissioner Hilton, and Hilltop keeps on correcting him with Hilltop, not Hilton. And what happens is that he ignores it pretty much. Now, what does end up happening is that eventually Hilltop decides to take the director out for a meal at the French Bistro, which is the place that the Lupinrangers work at. And the director actually suggests that all 5 of them go, so that the commissioner can treat all of them. So yes, he's treating all of them without actually wanting to, but is forced to. And so then what happens is that as I head over to the bistro, what happens is that we end up seeing that as they enter in, the guy that he attacked is like, there's that guy who decided to get back at me the other day. I should get back at him. And he suddenly transforms into a gangler, basically proving that yes, he is a gangler. And what happens is that he uses his ability from his Lupin collection item to take advantage of Sequoia. What that means is that during the time that they're having their meal, the director is talking very poorly of Sequoia, and eventually this gangler, his ability is basically to turn invisible. And so what happens is that he actually uses that ability to make Sequoia stand up, grab his food and dump it on the director's head. Then he goes and punches Kichiro because Kichiro's talking to him. And then following that, he punches Tsukasa. And then following that, he flips the table in front of him and knocks it into Hilltop's head. So yes, he basically like hurts everyone and gets in serious trouble for his actions. And at the same time, what happens is that from here, he returns back to the base. The director wants him fired, but fortunately Hilltop manages to get him suspended, which is better because it's only a 2-week suspension, meaning that he has to stay home. Otherwise, he could actually be fired if he decides to join the Patorangers, and he has to give up his versus changer for the time being. So he ends up returning home. In the meantime, what we do end up seeing is that Kichiro ends up going to the bistro to talk to the Lupinrangers, without knowing, obviously, about Sequoia, basically telling them what exactly happened to him now and what's the concern. And then what happens is that they end up getting some pastries in the shape of the Power Ranger heads on the helmets. And then what happens is that they decide to go on a mission to go speak to Sequoia. So they end up going to Sequoia's house, and Umika's the one that they want to specifically bring because she ends up being the one that buzzes in, and he ends up seeing her, so that allows him to go get the door because he realizes, oh, it's her, I want to get the door, of course, because he has a crush on her. So what happens is that he opens the door, and the others are there as well, and they end up going to talk to him about the incident, about how suddenly he did this, and he said, what did it feel like when you did that? Was there something there? And he said, yes, there was a sensation that felt like my hand was being moved. And so what happened is that at that point, the Lupinrangers leave, and they realize that it's clearly a gangler that can turn invisible. And so then at that point they realize they have to get the Lupin collection item of the Gangler, so they begin to plot how they're going to do it. And in the meantime, Sequoia also figures out that the Gangler must be invisible, and that's what must have happened. So then from here, we end up seeing the Power Rangers searching for the Gangler, for the attack, because they know that there's more attacks happening. And eventually, Sequoia calls in to tell the Commissioner about the Gangler, and when he tries to call in, the director response basically says, you shouldn't be doing any of this. If you do anything, you will be fired as soon as you leave your home. And the thing is that the Commissioner still cares about Sequoia a lot, so he actually goes out in his police van to go and meet Sequoia. And Sequoia, and what happens is the Commissioner says, you realize that if you do anything, you will lose your job. And Sequoia says, my goal is not to protect my job. My goal is to protect the happiness of people. And the thing is that at that point, the Commissioner gives him his versus changer and his trigger machine. So at that point, what happens is that he ends up joining the others. He watches as they're actually being attacked, and he notices this kind of green light that's in the shape of a square, and he recognizes it as likely being the location of where the Gangler is. So what he decides to do is he decides to use his versus changer to blast away at that spot, and he manages to unveil the Gangler. So at that point, the Power Rangers, after doing that, they do transform. They manage to fight the Gangler for a little while. Eventually, the Gangler tries to turn invisible again, and this time, the Lupinrangers decide to use some paint to make him become visible. And the Lupinrangers swoop in. They remove the Lupin collection item, and they give the Power Rangers the Good Striker. Following this, the Power Rangers use Patoran Ugo, and they use their one-strike attack to defeat the Gangler. Madoche shows up. She uses her ability to make the Gangler grow, and then at that point the Power Rangers end up using Pat Kaiser. The Gangler does turn invisible initially, but what happens is that eventually they decide to switch up the arm configuration to form Pat Kaiser Strong Bike, which is the combination that uses the crane and the biker trigger machines. So yes, we actually get to see that combination. Is the first time we get to see it. I would imagine at some point they probably will also do drill and biker, but we'll have to wait and see if that and when that would happen. Anyway, they eventually defeat the Gangler. Back at the base, everyone is happy about what has happened. Eventually the director comes in, and when he goes to speak to Sequoia, he actually thanks him. He doesn't fire him for what he did. Even though he left the office, everyone's talking about the Power Rangers, even the French HQ, which makes him extremely happy because, again, he's all about that reputation. He cares more than anything about building a good reputation for the Power Rangers, and if they're not doing their jobs properly, he's not going to want them to keep working. But because they're doing their jobs properly and he's getting a lot of reputation, he keeps Sequoia. He actually praises Sequoia. And yeah, things are pretty good. As far as things go, following this, we end up seeing the preview for the next episode. The preview looks pretty awesome. It's going to introduce us to Patoran X and Lupin X, which is going to be one person. His first name is Noel, and his last name is, I always forget his last name. It's also with a K. But I'm really excited for him just because I'm hoping that he will be a character that will really turn the show around to make it even more exciting. Noel Takao. And yeah, no, I'm looking forward to seeing him introduced in the show. It should be really interesting overall. And yeah, we'll get to see him very soon. He is gonna have both a police uniform, that's a very special one, and also a thief uniform. So he'll actually fight on both sides. Very interesting. I'd be very curious to see how things will progress and go from here, but overall I'm definitely looking forward to it. Please remember to like, comment, subscribe, tell me what you guys think. Are you guys looking forward to seeing Noel next episode? I really am, because I have a good feeling about him being a good character to make the show more exciting than it can be. And please remember to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys in the next video. So until then, guys, I'm Crazy71, and goodbye, guys.